my name's Artemis, and it appears as if we are slowly sliding back into some semblance of normality. Of course, not true normality, unless you consider deaths in the thousands from a virus that you could actually put some effort towards to try and stop as normal, in which case you might actually be one of our world leaders, but a kind of normality that we're just going to have to live with at least. And as we enter this new period of the new normal, we have to ask ourselves some serious questions, like, who the fuck is actually voting for these cunts anymore? Is it really that hard to wear a fucking mask? And obviously, what kind of effects COVID-19 going to have on Furcons and how they're going to have to change? Obviously, we're going to be focusing on that last question because the first two are pretty fucking self-explanatory. The first major priority of every convention is to provide a safe, welcoming space for the attendees to enjoy themselves safely. That is the number one priority across all boards, and that already is a major hurdle considering all the different rules that might be completely out of your control, such as different countries having different things going on with their control of the virus, although contamination does work its way in there. For instance, let's say that you live in Scotland, a wee bonny lass, and you want to go to a wee fucking Furcon over in the States. I'm going to stop now because that's bad. There's going to be quite a disparity between what the Scots do with their virus and all the restrictions they have, and what the Americans, well, I was going to say do, but it's basically don't do, or refuse to do, or it's my constitutional right to not do that. So with that being said, I was wondering exactly how comfortable people are going to be travelling to a con. I mean, a lot of cons involve international travel, some are local, but even then you're going to a very large convention filled with a lot of people, and how comfortable, after all of this pandemic, are people really going to be? Well, I went through Twitter and I set up a little poll just to try and gauge the general reaction. It's not the most in-depth thing in the world, but then again, neither am I. And this is what I had. I asked people whether, COVID-19 has put them off going to a convention. I had the option yes, it has put them off entirely. Yes, until it's safe. So, yes, I don't really want to go to a convention, but when it's safe to do so, I will probably return. Maybe because it's a bit of a grey area. Obviously, some people need to actually have the opportunity before they decide whether they're comfortable with it. And obviously, no, they don't really give a shit. They're happy to go to a con. Now, as you can see, yes, until it is safe, completely fucking dominated it. Completely stole it. It's not even a close race, obviously. Now, there's always going to be people that are put off for good, because, it is a big deal, especially if you have health concerns. And there's going to be people who just don't give a fuck. And that basically sums up a lot of people in this fandom regardless. Hey, you do you, whatever. But obviously, yes, until it is safe is a big deal, which means we need to make it safe. And that is a big arse ache to try and figure out. So obviously there are already a lot of things that are just not going to fly anymore with this new normality we're trying to find. And there are some very big things such as the 2 meter or 6 feet rule if you're American or a greedy foot fetishist that just isn't going to work at most conventions. So I had a little think and I put together a little list of 15 things that I feel are going to be massive considerations needed to make to actually open up a Furcon. That's a really long fucking title. Can we not shorten that? That's not bad. Maybe. Okay, no, yeah, that's good. We'll stick with that. International travel is obviously a big one, and it is an issue that is very much up in the air. Yes, pun entirely intended. And it is one of those things we have to consider. Prices could be going up as companies are struggling to actually stay afloat. Is there going to be testing at the border? Do people even want to make that effort to go abroad? Because it's going to be such a ball ache. And, it might actually even help out cons, actually, if they're testing at the border or you had to have a clean test, because international travellers won't be able to make it if they're infected, so maybe that's a plus. Take one look at the Skybridge at MFF and any real queue system for Reg, and you will see exactly what I mean when I say these facilities and hotels that these cons take place in are just not built for social distancing. It was never something that was in anybody's head when they built them. So actually trying to implement safe systems for people to move around without actually contaminating each other, that's an arse ache. Speaking of the space issue, will hotels now have to put a max occupancy limit on the rooms? Now, obviously in the UK and in the EU, that is a thing anyway, due to fire regulations. You're only allowed a certain amount of people, but when I went to MFF, I saw exactly how many furries can cram into one room, and it was at no surprise since obviously furries are used to squeezing themselves into tight spaces. Yes, I went there, not literally. But that might not be allowed. It might be something that you have to regulate because you can't have that many people in there potentially spreading. And then you have the issue of different households mixing. And again, how hotels are opening is going to be a difficult one. And on that note, is this the end of the room party? Is this the end of the lewd or not lewd parties and big bust-ups that happen in the big party suites and stuff? Because how can that happen? How can you have a little tiny room that you're cramming 100 people into now? Queue systems will also have to be massively rethought because obviously the snaking system isn't going to have that 2 meters or 6 feet distance that we need. And if you thought they were long now, you wait until you've got to keep a gap with the people in front and behind you. Don't even get me started on how the dealer's den is going to work. Holy fuck, I do not want to be the person who's got to organise that, but I imagine you all know what I mean in terms of how busy that bitch is. Face coverings and temperature checks could be the norm in most countries, but then how the hell is that going to work at a convention? Because, I mean, does this count as a face covering? Technically it does, it's covering my entire head. And temperature checks? Bitch, I am already overheating and I've only been filming for like 8 minutes at this stage, okay? Obviously I'm going to fail a temperature check, so how the hell's that going to work? A lot of places like to use contact tracing. Well, how the fuck is that going to work? Let's say you've got MFF, 10,000 people turn up at the con. One person turns up with a confirmed infectious case of COVID-19. You've then got to tell 10,000 people they got to self-isolate. Okay, I get it. Furries are used to having to contact a large amount of people when they infect other people with stuff. Yes, it's an STI joke, but that's a larger scale than most are used to. Does this make for a less accessible con? You could argue that it is more unfair. Does this make for a less accessible con? You could argue that it makes it all the harder for people with disabilities and health concerns because there are so much more risk than the rest of us. That's really a hard reality to face. That's actually quite nasty now that I think about it. That's not good. We can't trust people to fucking shower. How can we trust that they're going to wash their hands and maintain good hygiene? People are selfish assholes that only care about themselves by and large. And we see that at every convention. Can you really trust them to have any sort of common sense? And imagine the outrage from the general public if one of our conventions caused a spike. I mean, how are the cities going to feel when you've got thousands of people descending upon them from all over the world when there's a virus that's killing people in the thousands? That's going to really hit our reputation. But of course, the big one is, how is any of this enforceable? How can the con actually put this into place and make sure it's followed? Are they going to have to hire on new staff, maybe even fucking security? Could this put the cons under more pressure to actually deliver these kind of things? Are they going to have to raise prices, hire on more staff? Is it going to become something that is much more of an organised function rather than just something that we do within ourselves? And finally, could this be the end of the large convention experience? Could this be the end of having cons with attendance figures in 5 figures? Is this going to be the rise of smaller conventions where less people can attend and that there'll be more of those? Is that the way forward? Who knows, maybe. Of course, these events are made for the attendees and to bring people in, and therefore I thought, well, it's not just my opinion that matters, it's everybody else's. So I also polled people on Twitter to see what things they would like to have a look at, and you were going to see a lot of those here, and I shall talk about some of them. Big Dragon starts us off with wanting people to be more clean and more cleanliness, and that's not just a COVID thing, that's just in general. Good suggestion. Autumn Ruffy talking about capacities and having different things such as obviously room capacities for dealers' den and maybe even how many are attending at the con. I think that's actually a good shout. That is something I could realistically see us having coming forward, you know? And of course, Dizzy, my lovely little favourite, talking about cleanliness again. You know what, I wasn't going to include this because it's a repeat point, but I have to hammer this point home. Be clean, people, not just because of COVID, just be clean. And of course, then there's Alex the Z-Man, which does represent quite a lot of people who just want things to go back to normal. And, you know, I think that's nice of you, that's optimistic, but I think that's not going to happen, dude. I'm sorry. Like, this virus is going to be a part of humanity for a long-ass time now. We're not going to fully eradicate it, probably within our lifetime. And we might get vaccines and stuff, but it's still going to be something that we have to work around. So even if things do go back to normal, we've got a couple of years of that, maybe even a decade before that happens. And we've got some people talking about using masks, social distancing, and gloves and PPE, and obviously that's very good, that's very valid stuff. That's something that a lot of people, I think, would get on board with. A lot of makers have been making masks. That shouldn't be too difficult to get people on with. I like the idea of mandatory hand washing, but my God, that's going to be difficult to try and enforce and get people to queue up for. But hopefully people by then are sort of in that mode anyway. Everyone's doing it. You don't have to enforce it, maybe, hopefully. And then talking about testing and you having to actually be tested to attend the con, and if there's a vaccine, you have to have that vaccine. And I think that will come in. I think that will be a thing. They might even supply the testing or you can pay for it, but that's one of the real ways that you can ensure that things are going to be safe and people are going to be safe, is that everyone's tested and you can provide that. And if you can't provide a test that says you haven't got it, you can't come in. I did see a few people talking about the 621 rule being more rigidly enforced, but how can you enforce that? That's one of the really hard ones. Like, you can, you know, promote it a bit more, but actually getting people to do it, incredibly fucking difficult. And then there was the harsh reality from Capitalist Biter that they shouldn't be running during a pandemic, and God, no one wants to admit it, but no, you're right. Until this is gone, under control, there's a vaccine or something, we really shouldn't be doing this. And that's not something anybody wants to face up to, because we like conventions, but ultimately, it's not a good idea. And unfortunately, there's no real word on whether we're getting a vaccine soon or not. So this could be something that we don't see a proper convention for a couple of years now. I do like Wolf's idea, fewer attendants per con, more little cons popping up, everybody can go to them. Now, it does mean that not everyone can go to every con, but I think the smaller cons have a more homey feel. That could actually be a benefit to our fandom. And some more reality, don't think they're gonna happen because it doesn't matter what we put in place, it's not gonna be enough. And I think you're right. It's true, you can put all of these measures in place, but you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can't force this on people, and you can't force them to actually abide by it. I mean, that's just the harsh reality of it, and if you can't trust your attendees, then you can't have a con for them to attend, maybe. Now, of course, people were having a lot of opinions. These are just a few that I decided to show up, but this is I think, a good representation of what people are feeling, but no one really knows because it's a difficult thing. I would hate to be the first convention to open after this because everyone's going to be watching you to see what to do, and you're leading by example. So finally, what are my personal predictions for the future? Well, I have a few. Let's go through them. I think there will be limited attendance and limited space in rooms. Hotels will be regimenting and regulating exactly what they're going to allow, and cons will have to say, especially places like ConvoyWolf, which has already struggled with overcrowding, this is how many people we can allow at our convention, and when we hit that number, gone, sorry, goodbye. It's just the way it's going to have to go, unfortunately. I believe there will be capacities and one-way systems for events and panels, dealers' den, artist alley. You'll have to go in one way, follow a track, and it will be a set amount of people at a time. And I think maybe that would help. You get a lot of people just milling around in the den. That would sort of stop that. And it means that you would force people to go and look at every fucking dealer rather than everyone just rushing to whoever's drawing the best dicks. Maybe reduced cash transactions. I wouldn't be surprised if everybody went contactless payment only. I mean, that's the way this country is going at the moment, although some people are just clinging to cash, so I wouldn't be surprised if that comes in. Social distancing spaces and more regulations on where you can go and what you can do there. More sort of routes. You have to go this way, you can't go that way. Specific elevators just for going up and down. There might even have to be more strict cleaning procedures for a lot of this stuff, and a lot of the little seating areas that we all enjoy will probably be sort of cordoned off and gridded so that you know that you're safe enough away from other people. I mean, this is another one we're going to have to deal with, is that fursuiters, very touchy-feely, very happy with the hugs, and can you really do that safely, even if you're in a suit? I mean, some form of track and trace system, I would imagine, contact tracing, so, you know, if shit does go wrong and we know where people are, we can say, oh, right, okay, you all need to get tested. That's a very difficult one, so you kind of need to split that into who's going to different areas of the con and when, but who knows, by then we could have apps that do it for us. And then there's the real hard one, and that's that I don't honestly believe, I could be wrong, but I don't believe there's going to be proper conventions back in full form until late 2021. I just don't think it's going to happen until everything is, you know, we've gotten on top of it all. It's just not going to be a thing. You know, I'm going to be optimistically registering for ConvoyWolf in October when it opens up, if it opens up. But I don't really expect to actually be going. I would love to go. I'd love to be wrong. I would love that, you know, we get a vaccine, we get on top of it, people have common sense, and we get control of this virus. But I don't trust people. They're a bunch of dicks. And honestly, I think we should all settle in and prepare for a long dry spell of furry conventions. So you have it, there's some little considerations to make in the wake of all of this convention COVID-19 bullshit. It's not a fun one, but I imagine a lot of us will be going online for our cons. That's been pretty good. There were some people talking in the comments about that. We can still enjoy the fandom like that. I do think that maybe fur meets sort of set the precedent for how cons can open up. Cons could even just become a daily thing, no staying overnight, but it's something we're going to have to sort of figure out as we go, and I know that there's going to be a lot of apprehension for it. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'm glad you watched it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you agree with some of these points. Let me know down in the comments, and I shall read them, what you think about cons opening, what considerations they might need to make. Did any of this make sense? Maybe you'd like to support me. Can slip that in there as well. There it is. Just have a little look, maybe. Who knows? You might enjoy it. Thank you again. I'm not going to dawdle on with this ending. We're just going to cut now, and we're done. Bye.